The rhythmic clinking of ice against glass was the soundtrack to another Friday night. My wife, Sarah, was getting ready for the annual Halloween bash, a tradition we'd upheld for years. The scent of her perfume, a blend of vanilla and something citrusy, always clung to her, a familiar comfort. I, meanwhile, was wrestling with the itchy fabric of a pirate costume, the plastic cutlass feeling absurdly light in my hand. The air in our usually quiet suburban home was thick with anticipation, a hum of energy that always accompanied Sarah's preparations for a night out. She emerged from the bedroom, a vision in black. Her Catwoman costume fit like a second skin, the sleek material accentuating her every move. A playful smirk touched her lips as she surveyed my own less than impressive attire. "Ready for adventure, Captain," she teased, her voice a melody that usually soothed my soul. The house was alive with the distant thrum of music and muffled laughter from the party next door. This was our neighborhood's big event, a chaotic explosion of creativity and merriment. I remember the way the fairy lights strung across our porch twinkled, casting dancing shadows on the fallen leaves that carpeted the lawn. The crisp autumn air carried the scent of wood smoke and decaying foliage, a quintessential October perfume. Sarah, ever the enchantress, had transformed into a creature of the night, her movements fluid and captivating. I watched her, a pang of something akin to pride mixed with a subtle unease. She was, and always had been, the star of any room she entered, drawing eyes and admiration like a magnet. Tonight, however, as she adjusted the mask that concealed half her face, a flicker of something unfamiliar crossed her eyes, a fleeting expression I couldn't quite decipher before it was replaced by her usual effervescent charm. The evening was just beginning, but a subtle shift had occurred, a barely perceptible tremor beneath the surface of our ordinary lives, presaging a seismic disruption. Well, here I am. Just another face in the crowd of Harmony Creek, where the biggest excitement is Mrs. Gable's prize-winning petunias or the latest scandal to ripple through the knitting circle. I like to think of myself as a good neighbor, always ready with a casserole for a new arrival or a sympathetic ear for someone's woes. My lawn is reasonably mowed, my car is, well, it runs, and I haven't caused a single public disturbance in years. I even volunteer at the bake sale every spring, though my lemon bars are notoriously dry. Perfection, as we all know, is a myth, and I've made peace with my own brand of amiable mediocrity. Our town, you see, is a masterpiece of curated normalcy. We pride ourselves on our friendly waves, our shared gossip, and the comforting predictability of our days. It's the kind of place where everyone knows your name, your dog's name, and the precise brand of coffee you prefer. And that's precisely where the cracks begin to show. Beneath the veneer of polite smiles and exchanged pleasantries lies a labyrinth of unspoken resentments and carefully guarded secrets. It's a town where the most scandalous thing you can do is to dare to be different, to rock the boat even a little. Take for instance, the esteemed Mayor Thompson. A pillar of the community, they say. Always with a booming laugh and a hand outstretched for a firm handshake. But ask anyone who's ever tried to propose something remotely innovative, and you'll hear a different tune. His vision for Harmony Creek seems to involve keeping things exactly as they are, frozen in a perpetual state of quaintness, while conveniently overlooking the decay creeping in at the edges. It's an art form, really, this collective amnesia we practice. We'd rather whisper behind cupped hands about Mrs. Henderson's questionable new hat than confront the fact that the old mill, our town's historical heart, is slowly collapsing. And then there's the peculiar case of Eleanor Vance. She's the epitome of our town's social grace, always dressed impeccably, her laughter like tinkling bells. She's the one who organizes the charity galas and presides over the book club with an iron fist veiled in velvet. Yet, tonight, as she adjusted the mask that concealed half her face, a flicker of something unfamiliar crossed her eyes, a fleeting expression I couldn't quite decipher before it was replaced by her usual effervescent charm. The evening was just beginning, but a subtle shift had occurred, a barely perceptible tremor beneath the surface of our ordinary lives, presaging a seismic disruption. It was a moment that hinted at the unspoken dramas playing out behind Harmony Creek's perfectly manicured hedges, and I, like everyone else, found myself inexplicably drawn into the unfolding narrative. The persistent hum of the refrigerator, usually a comforting backdrop, began to grate on my nerves. I dismissed the subtle changes at first, a slightly sharper tone in his voice when I asked about his day, a tendency to retreat to his study with increasing frequency. These were, I told myself, just signs of a demanding work week. He was always dedicated, wasn't he? I'd attribute his quietness to exhaustion, his withdrawn demeanor to simply needing space. Even the way he'd started leaving my calls unanswered, only to reply hours later with a perfunctory busy, was easy to rationalize. He was probably in meetings, I'd reasoned, or stuck in traffic. It was never anything more significant than that, just the ebb and flow of everyday life, or so I believed. The truth was, a slow erosion of shared intimacy had been taking place, a silent accumulation of tiny slights and unexpressed disappointments. He'd always been a man of few words, a trait I'd once found grounding. But lately, his silence felt less like contentment and more like a wall being built, brick by invisible brick. My attempts to bridge the growing chasm were met with polite disinterest or, worse, a weary sigh that spoke volumes of his perceived burden. I remembered one evening, after I'd prepared his favorite meal, he'd barely touched it, his gaze fixed on his phone. "Everything okay?" I'd asked, my voice a little too bright, too hopeful. He'd offered a cursory nod. "Just tired. Long day." The unspoken accusation hung in the air, that I was bothering him with my trivial concerns. Frustration had begun to simmer beneath my own placid surface. I felt increasingly invisible, my efforts to nurture our connection met with a chilling indifference. Resentment, a venomous vine, started to twist around my heart. "Did you even read that article I sent you?" I asked him one night, trying to sound casual, though my voice trembled slightly. He looked up from his laptop, his eyes blank. "Which one?" he replied, his tone devoid of curiosity. "The one about the new art exhibit." "I thought you might like it," I said, my shoulders slumping. "Oh, right," he mumbled, turning back to the screen. "Didn't get around to it. You know how it is." But I didn't, not really. I knew how he was, and that was becoming the problem. The space between us, once filled with shared laughter and easy conversation, now felt vast and cavernous, filled only with the echoes of things left unsaid. The insidious tendrils of betrayal had wound their way into our lives not solely through his actions, but amplified by the whispers of others. It was Sarah, with her deceptively sweet smile and insatiable appetite for drama, who first began to sow seeds of doubt. I remembered a casual coffee date, months before the chasm between us had become an unbridgeable gulf. Sarah, leaning in conspiratorially, had recounted a harmless anecdote about his supposed flippancy regarding our shared future. "He said he was just going with the flow, you know," she'd murmured, her eyes wide with feigned concern. At the time, I'd dismissed it, chalking it up to her tendency to embellish. But the words, once planted, had taken root. Then there was Mark, a long-time acquaintance who had always seemed to view our happiness as a personal affront. He'd find opportune moments to innocently inquire about our plans, his questions subtly laced with implications of his own dissatisfaction. I recalled a party, a year prior, where he'd cornered me by the bar. "Still together, huh?" he'd asked, a smirk playing on his lips. "Surprised you've lasted this long." He always seemed a bit restless. His words, meant to wound, had been a mere annoyance then. Now, in retrospect, they felt like carefully aimed barbs, designed to erode my confidence in our relationship. These individuals, masters of manipulation, reveled in the chaos they orchestrated. They fed on discord, their own insecurities seemingly finding solace in the unraveling of another's peace. Sarah's gossip, Mark's thinly veiled criticisms, they were not random acts of unkindness but calculated strategies. They fed the flames of his doubt and fueled my own anxieties, ensuring that any spark of hope for reconciliation was quickly extinguished by the suffocating blanket of mistrust they so expertly wove. Their machinations were a dark art, their currency the suffering of others, and I, sadly, had become their unwilling canvas. The discovery was a brutal, physical blow. It wasn't a gradual dawning of suspicion, but a violent rupture in the fabric of my reality. I remember the distinct sound of the phone vibrating against the wooden table, an insistent, almost mocking buzz. My partner, distracted by a conversation, had left it unattended. Curiosity, a serpent I usually kept leashed, uncoiled with a venomous hiss. A notification flashed across the screen, a name I didn't recognize, accompanied by a string of emojis that screamed intimacy. My breath hitched. A cold dread, like a fist squeezing my lungs, began to tighten. Then, a quick, furtive glance at the message preview, words that ripped through me, shattering the carefully constructed illusion of our life together. The sheer disbelief was a physical shock, making my limbs tremble and my vision blur at the edges. It was as if the floor had dropped out from beneath me, leaving me suspended in a void of pure, unadulterated horror. Rage, a molten inferno, erupted from that initial shock. It was a primal scream trapped in my throat, a visceral urge to shatter everything around me. The betrayal wasn't just an emotional wound, it felt like a physical violation, a defilement of sacred ground. Humiliation washed over me in scorching waves. The thought of their shared laughter, their whispered secrets, their clandestine moments while I remained blissfully ignorant, turned my stomach. I felt like a fool, a naive pawn in a game I never knew I was playing. The carefully curated image of our love, so precious to me, was now tainted, smeared with the dirt of deceit. My mind replayed countless conversations, searching for signs I'd missed, for the subtle clues that had been hidden in plain sight. Each missed opportunity, each dismissed intuition, was a fresh stab of self-recrimination. The evidence was stark, undeniable. Beyond the initial, damning text, I found a trail of breadcrumbs leading to an abyss of lies. Photos, stored innocently in a forgotten album, depicted a clandestine rendezvous, a stolen kiss under a moon I had shared with my partner, oblivious. Emails, unearthed with trembling hands, detailed future plans, shared intimacies, and a chilling disregard for my existence. It wasn't just a fleeting mistake, it was a sustained deception, a parallel life being lived behind my back. The confirmation was a sickening crunch, the sound of my world breaking into irreparable pieces. The pain was a physical ache, a raw, exposed nerve that throbbed with every beat of my frantic heart. The fury simmered, threatening to boil over, to consume everything in its path. The immediate aftermath of the betrayal was a swift and brutal sundering. The dissolution of our partnership was swift, a clean break that felt more like amputation. Then came the separation, a stark physical manifestation of the chasm that had opened between us. What followed, inevitably, was the arduous and public process of divorce. Each legal document, each hushed conversation between attorneys, felt like another blow in a battle I was rapidly losing. Friends, once staunch allies, began to drift away, their loyalties tested and fractured. Some, caught in the crossfire, chose sides, while others, unable to bear witness to the unfolding drama, simply vanished, leaving me to navigate the wreckage alone. The isolation was profound. My community, once a source of comfort and belonging, now felt like a hostile territory. The whispers followed me, the sidelong glances, the subtle exclusion from gatherings I had once been an integral part of. It was as if a contagion had spread, and I was the pariah. I felt utterly abandoned, adrift in a sea of judgment and misunderstanding. The shared laughter, the easy camaraderie, were replaced by a chilling silence, a void where connection used to be. My reputation became a battlefield. Every past indiscretion, real or imagined, was resurrected and weaponized. I was forced to defend myself against accusations, to meticulously piece together my narrative amidst a storm of innuendo and outright lies. It felt like a desperate struggle for survival, each word carefully chosen, each defense strategically deployed. My assets, once shared and secure, were now contested territory, subject to a protracted siege. The legal maneuvers felt like artillery barrages, aimed at diminishing my stake, at leaving me with as little as possible. I fought for every inch, for every piece of security, my back against the wall. The initial skirmishes had been defensive, a desperate scramble to shore up my defenses against the relentless legal onslaught. Now, a new phase was dawning, one that shifted from containment to active engagement. My objective was no longer merely to survive the siege, but to dismantle the forces arrayed against me and expose the architects of this calculated destruction. This required a meticulously crafted strategy, one that moved beyond the reactive and embraced the proactive. I began by establishing a robust intelligence network, not of human operatives, but of data streams. I meticulously traced the financial conduits, mapping the intricate webs of transactions that had been used to obfuscate and manipulate. This involved delving into public records, cross-referencing information, and employing specialized analytical tools to identify patterns of illicit activity. The goal was to build an irrefutable case, a tapestry of evidence woven from digital threads. The execution phase demanded precision and patience. I couldn't afford to reveal my hand prematurely. Instead, I opted for a strategy of slow, deliberate exposure. Each piece of incriminating information was carefully cataloged and prepared, awaiting the opportune moment for deployment. I leveraged third-party conduits, anonymized platforms that allowed for the secure dissemination of my findings without direct attribution. This served a dual purpose. It protected me from immediate reprisal while amplifying the reach and credibility of the information itself. The aim was to sow seeds of doubt and suspicion, to create a groundswell of public opinion that would eventually erode the perpetrator's standing and influence. It was a campaign of information warfare, waged on the battlefield of perception. This path was not without its profound moral quandaries. The act of seeking retribution, even when justified, carried a heavy ethical burden. I wrestled with the potential for collateral damage, with the possibility that my pursuit of justice might inadvertently harm innocent parties caught in the crossfire. The temptation to employ less savory, albeit effective, methods was ever present, a dark whisper in the strategic planning. However, I held firm to the principle that the ends, no matter how righteous the cause, could not justify means that violated my own moral compass. This internal conflict was as significant as any external obstacle, a constant calibration of my resolve against the potential for self-corruption. The challenge was to achieve accountability without becoming a mirror of the very darkness I sought to vanquish. The tendrils of my retribution snaked through the lives of those who had wronged me, not with the swiftness of a viper's strike, but with the slow, inexorable crawl of a creeping blight. Financial ruin, once a distant threat, became a stark, unyielding reality for many. Fortunes meticulously built over years crumbled to dust, like sandcastles at the mercy of an indifferent tide. Business empires, once towering symbols of their arrogance, imploded, leaving behind only husks and the hollow echo of ambition. The whispers started, then grew into a roar, each syllable laced with condemnation. Their reputations, carefully curated facades of respectability, fractured under the weight of exposure. Scrutiny, once a distant concern, became a blinding spotlight, revealing every flaw, every deception, every moment of their perfidy. The shame was a corrosive agent, eating away at their social standing, leaving them pariahs in the very circles they once commanded. The courtroom doors, which had once stood as barriers, now swung open to reveal the grim finality of justice, or at least, what passed for it in the eyes of the law. For some, the cells became their new dwelling, the cold, sterile confines a stark contrast to their former opulent lives. The clang of iron gates was a chilling symphony, a percussive punctuation to the end of their freedom. As the reality of their downfall set in, a profound and sickening wave washed over me. Witnessing the despair etched on their faces, the utter devastation that had befallen them, ignited a fire of guilt within my soul. It was a searing, relentless burn, a constant reminder of the collateral damage wrought by my quest for vindication. I saw the fear in their eyes, the hollowed-out shells of men and women who had once exuded confidence, and a bitter taste filled my mouth. The weight of their suffering pressed down upon me, an unbearable burden. The satisfaction I had anticipated was curdled into a profound sense of unease. Was this the price of justice? Had I, in seeking to purify, merely spread a different kind of darkness? The lines blurred, and the clarity I had once possessed began to fray. The hollow victories felt like defeats, each ruined life a fresh wound on my conscience. The faces of their families, innocent bystanders caught in the crossfire, haunted my waking hours and infiltrated my dreams, their silent accusations more damning than any spoken word. The path I had chosen, once illuminated by a fierce, righteous flame, had become a tangled, shadowed forest. The pursuit of retribution, a seemingly clear objective, had instead led me to a profound and disquieting introspection. I began to see the cost not in tangible losses, but in the erosion of the very essence of who I was. The initial clarity, the unwavering conviction, had been replaced by a gnawing uncertainty, a realization that the lines between right and wrong had become smudged, indistinct. The world, once painted in stark contrasts of good and evil, now appeared in shades of gray, and I, the supposed arbiter of justice, found myself mired in the murk. My innocence, a shield I hadn't even realized I carried, had been the first casualty. It shattered with the first decisive act, the moment I crossed a threshold from which there was no return. Each subsequent step only deepened the chasm, leaving behind the naive belief that vengeance could ever truly be clean. It was a messy, corrosive thing, seeping into every corner of my being, tarnishing the pristine idealism that had once fueled my resolve. The echoes of suffering, both inflicted and witnessed, became an unwelcome soundtrack to my days, a constant reminder of the unintended consequences of my crusade. Relationships, once anchors in the storm, began to fray under the weight of my transformation. The people who had stood by me, who had believed in my cause, found themselves increasingly distant, unable to comprehend the hardening of my gaze, the guardedness of my words. My silence, once a sign of focused determination, became a barrier. The shared laughter and confidences dwindled, replaced by polite inquiries and averted eyes. I was no longer the person they knew, and the growing estrangement left a hollow ache, a stark reminder that even in victory, there could be profound loneliness. This introspective journey, born of the ashes of my quest, revealed a stranger in the mirror. The fire that had once burned with righteous fury had banked, leaving behind embers of something far more complex. I recognized a resilience forged in hardship, but also a weariness, a somber understanding of the human capacity for both darkness and light. It wasn't a transformation I had sought, but it was the one I had earned. The lessons were harsh, etched not in stone, but in the very fabric of my being, a perpetual testament to the labyrinthine nature of consequence. The embers of past conflagrations, though now cooled, still held a potent warmth, a reminder of the transformative heat I had endured. This wasn't a period of forgetting, but of repurposing, of taking the ashes of what was and cultivating new growth. My journey of reconstruction began in earnest, not with grand pronouncements, but with the quiet, deliberate act of seeking meaningful engagement. The professional landscape, once a familiar territory, now presented itself as a blank canvas. I approached it with a newfound humility, eager to learn and contribute in ways that resonated with my evolved understanding of purpose. This wasn't about recapturing lost status or prestige, it was about finding a niche where my experiences, however tumultuous, could serve a greater good, fostering connection and offering a steady hand where it was needed most. My involvement with the community became a vital anchor. I sought out groups dedicated to rebuilding and supporting those who had faced adversity, not as a savior, but as a fellow traveler. Sharing my own hard-won insights, listening to the stories of others, and working alongside them to mend what was broken forged bonds of shared humanity. It was in these shared endeavors, in the collective effort to create something better from fragments, that I rediscovered the profound satisfaction of belonging and contributing. This communal embrace was a balm to the soul, a constant reminder that even in the wake of destruction, the spirit of cooperation and mutual aid could flourish, offering solace and strength. The most profound reconstruction, however, occurred within. Self-development became a deliberate practice, a continuous exploration of the values that now guided my compass. Resilience, once a reactive defense, transformed into a proactive force, an unwavering belief in the capacity for renewal. Empathy, sharpened by my own trials, became a cornerstone, enabling me to connect with others on a deeper, more authentic level. Integrity, tested by fire, solidified into an unshakable commitment to truth and ethical conduct. These weren't abstract concepts, they were the living principles that shaped my decisions, my interactions, and my very outlook on life. This ongoing process of self-discovery, of consciously embodying these learned values, continues to illuminate my path, guiding me toward a future imbued with a profound and enduring sense of meaning. The crucible of experience, though often searing, has forged in me an unyielding conviction in the power of authenticity. The storms I have weathered have not diminished my spirit, but rather, have revealed its inherent resilience. Each challenge presented an opportunity to excavate the bedrock of my character, to understand what truly mattered when all else seemed to crumble. It is this hard-won understanding, this quiet knowing, that I wish to share. To those navigating their own tempests, remember that the winds of adversity, however fierce, carry within them the seeds of growth. Do not shy away from the discomfort. It is in the friction that the edges of our strength are sharpened. Embrace the lessons, however painful, for they are the architects of your deepest wisdom. Cultivate a garden of self-compassion, for the journey toward wholeness is rarely a straight path, and there will be stumbles along the way. Offer yourself the same grace and understanding you would extend to a cherished friend. Let the pursuit of truth be your compass. Even when the easy path beckons with its deceptive allure, choose the one that aligns with your inner knowing. It is in this unwavering commitment to integrity that true peace resides. Your choices, no matter how small they may seem, ripple outwards, shaping not only your own destiny but also the world around you. Be a beacon of your values, a quiet testament to the strength that lies in living with purpose and unwavering ethical grounding. The tapestry of life is woven with threads of both joy and sorrow, triumph and tribulation. Do not let the darker hues define the entirety of your creation. Instead, learn to appreciate the intricate beauty of the whole, recognizing that each color, each texture, contributes to a masterpiece that is uniquely yours. Your resilience is not merely the ability to withstand hardship, but the capacity to rise from it, transformed and illuminated. Carry hope like a flickering flame, nurturing it in the quiet moments, allowing it to guide you through the darkest nights. Your journey, marked by its unique struggles, has the power to inspire and uplift others, a gentle reminder that even in the face of overwhelming odds, the human spirit possesses an extraordinary capacity for endurance and for finding light.